Hey, what's good? What's really good? This is the SatsforLife podcast, and I am your host, Rustin Watt. We are a Bitcoin and Liberty-focused podcast delivering education and news. This is our first official episode. Check out the intro if you haven't. Follow us at SatsforLife. Subscribe to us on Patreon, where premium members get the SatsforLife mug, and founders will receive an autographed copy of Why Commies Hate Bitcoin, a book on how the philosophies are incompatible and how Bitcoin restores a commie's worst enemy, property rights. We'll get the Kickstarter released this week. We at Satsforlife are not financial advisors. We don't advise any financial decisions. We implore that you trust but verify everything you see here and in your various media. Do your own research and make financial decisions for you and yours based on what is right for you and your situation. Satsforlife is here to do our part in bridging the education gap in economics and Bitcoin and have some goddamn fun along the way. Can you feel me? Before we get rolling, I want to give a shout out to my personal hero, Dr. Ron Paul. Changed my life back in 2008. All of his works, Saif Ad-Din's The Bitcoin Standard, Bitcoin Zayn, Bitcoin for Black America, and the works of FIAT and Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard. Austrian economics is key to understanding Bitcoin. At least it was for me, and it sped up the process. But the learning never stops. We'll link to some material in the show notes for those looking to go down the rabbit hole. In my discussions with those new to Bitcoin or showing interest, those who were always able to pick it up quickest understood gold's value proposition and the importance of hard money. We aim to cover the characteristics of money, a history of money and gold through 1971. The impacts of hard money cannot be understated. Through this understanding, I believe viewers will be able to grasp Bitcoin and make those connections. So let's get to it. Let's take a look at the characteristics of money. They are durability, portability, divisibility, uniformity, scarcity, and acceptability. Before we traded fiat paper for goods and services, there's a long history of exchange of value using barter, such as animals, food, and then the beginning of harder money in stones and shells, up until the era of monetary metals. Money came to be due to it not being easily broken. It was durable, and it was easy to carry. It was portable for various values. Money was able to be divisible into smaller units. Uniformity is also key. This means that no matter when it is printed, it will still maintain its value. Fiat is ass in this category. Go visit the local Kroger, King Soopers, Safeway. You may just be starting to understand this the hard way. Scarcity relates to a limited supply. Fiat is also ass in this category. Trillions printed in the past year and a half alone. Again, some are just now starting to see what this leads to and how damaging inflation can be. But history has taught us these lessons time and time again. Finally, acceptability, which involves merchants and producers and consumers recognizing and accepting for payment of goods and services. This is where fiat has the edge currently, but this is changing. See El Salvador. Shout out to President Bukele. If you're following us on Twitter out there, go drop a comment in our poll. Which characteristic do you feel is the most important? Now, as we said before, inflation and its damaging effects on society as a whole have been illustrated for us numerous times. But we don't get taught monetary history or Austrian economics in school. Let's start with one of the original Bitcoiners, with the Yap people and the Rye stones. These stones could go up to sizes of 4 metric tons. They were difficult to harvest and make. It gave them value. They even had local ledger systems. Solid hard money system was in place until their market was flooded with false stones, devaluing their currency and opening them up to be preyed on by coconut traders Scarceability matters. Shells and beads were used as money, as they were thought to be scarce and served their purpose for a time. Eventually, their stock-to-flow ratio was destroyed due to supply and demand dynamics. They were crushed. Fast forward, we have gold and monetary metals. Gold has been the hardest form of money in existence until the past decade. The United States did not become a fully fiat monetary system until 1971, when we went off the gold standard. Go ahead and take a look at the chart since 1971. That's the gold chart. And now let's take a look at the dollar chart. Scarcity and uniformity matter. We can go all the way back to Croesus of Greece, who was the first to mint gold coins. This led to standardization in value and increased global trade. It was the best system of the time, but with a couple drawbacks, including silver and copper as coins with ebbs and flow of value due to supply and demand dynamics. The second was the state and counterfeiters would reduce the actual gold content of coins, causing their value to depreciate, while the government and counterfeiters were transferred that purchasing power. Are we starting to see some connections here? When the coin's gold content was diminished, so did the value through the invisible tax of inflation. By the 19th century, paper money and checks that were backed by gold held at banks and central banks began to be used for transactions. While this scaled gold quickly, it took silver out of the monetary game as a real player, as the gold standard began to take hold. The gold standard led to global capital accumulation and trade, as there was a nearly united and sound form of money. Where it became an issue was when gold was centralized by banks and later central banks. This led them to increase the supply beyond their quantities of gold, devaluing money, and as it did in Greece, this transfer is a hidden tax, where these centralized forces transfer purchasing from holders to themselves, the government and the banks. The 8 gram of gold aureus was issued by Rome's last dictator Caesar and retained itself until Nero began coin clipping. What this was, they would collect and remint the coins with less gold or silver content. He held the same belief of another enemy of free markets, Keynes, and modern monetary theorists. To get over their issues, let's devalue the currency, reducing real-world wages, reducing government burden, subsidizing ourselves in the process at the expense of the populace. Does this sound familiar? Caracalla reduced gold and silver content, as did Diocletian. As the value of their money fell, a familiar cycle resulted. As the coins were clipped and money supply increased, emperors continued spending, which led to economic crises and inflation that they solved through further clipping and devaluation. Let's get a quote from Ferdinand Lips. It should be of interest to modern Keynesian economists as well to the present generation of investors that although the emperors of Rome frantically tried to manage their economies, they only succeeded in making matters worse. Price and wage controls and legal tender laws were passed, but it was like trying to hold back the tides. Rioting, corruption, lawlessness, and a mindless mania for speculation and gambling engulfed the empire like a plague. With money so unreliable and debased, speculation in commodities became far more attractive than producing them. While Rome deteriorated, Constantine the Great embraced sound money, surviving over 1,100 years using the solidus, the longest-serving sound money in history. Constantinople would later follow easy money practices and was overtaken by the Ottomans around 1453. In the period of and leading to the Renaissance, taxation and invisible taxation through inflation destroyed the wealth of Europeans. Following the Napoleonic Wars, European nations adopted the gold standard, bringing in a golden age. As more adopted, the more marketable gold got, and more incentives brought in more nations. Remind you of anything? As a majority of the globe was using a single monetary unit, unseen capital accumulation, government restraint, trade, increase in living standards. Not only were economies far freer back then, government had few micromanagers, as the goat Mises puts it. The gold standard was the world standard of the age of capitalism, increasing welfare, liberty, and democracy, both political and economic. In the eyes of the free traders, its main eminence was precisely the fact that it was an international standard as required by international trade and the transactions of the international money and capital markets. It was the medium of exchange by means of which Western industrialism and Western capital had borne Western civilization to the remotest parts of Earth's surface, everywhere destroying the fetters of old age prejudices and superstitions, sowing the seeds of new life and new well-being, freeing minds and souls, and creating riches unheard of before. It accompanied the triumphal, unprecedented progress of Western liberalism, ready to unite all nations into a community of free nations, peacefully cooperating with one another. It is easy to understand why people viewed the gold standard as a symbol of the greatest and most beneficial of all historical changes. Shortly after a meeting at Jekyll Island, that's for another time, and the creation of the Fed, the world's major economies went off the gold standard as World War I broke out. Unsound government money was issued. Sweden and Switzerland, on the other hand, remained on the gold standard into the 30s. It was essential for the state to control money in order to further impose themselves on the lives of their citizens. It was essential to remove the shackles a gold standard placed on the government. One cannot fund no-end, winless wars on the gold standard or run up $30 trillion debts. Eventually, FDR would seize gold, paying citizens $20 an ounce, before revaluing gold at $30 an ounce, instantly devaluing the centralized money. Oh, but this was needed to get out of the Depression. This is a fallacy. It prolonged it. It wasn't until the New Deal ended along with the war, this led to a 75% cut in spending over a 3.5-year span, along with the cost controls being removed. Unshackling the burden placed on consumers and producers since the New Deal was implemented. Bretton Woods, Nixon going full fiat in 1971, and here we are. Record money printing and money devaluation as it did in the past has led to chaos and global tensions. Citizens' purchasing power is being stolen and siphoned to the state and its cronies. Hence the ever-widening wealth disparity. History has taught us what currency debasement and centralization of money can lead to. Next time, we'll delve into how Bitcoin is the hardest money ever discovered or created and meets those characteristics of durability, portability, divisibility, uniformity, scarcity, and acceptability.
In the grocery store, at the gas pump, on the car lot, prices keep rising. From May to June, inflation jumping nearly 1%.
I hope you can take from today that hard money that maintains value over time forces individuals, governments, businesses, etc. to act rationally and live within their means. Again, the fiat experiment has only been in place since 1971, and what Austrian economists have warned about has come to fruition. Visit usdebtclock.org and try to wrap your head around that. Let's get to the root of the issues leading to economic disparity. I'm going to end it on a good one myself today. Hard money creates hard people, sovereign individuals. Soft money creates soft people, people that can be pushed around, manipulated, and controlled. When rules don't apply equally, we don't have rules, we have rulers. As the gold standard led to an unprecedented era of wealth and prosperity and innovation, Bitcoin builds on this value proposition through decentralization. Bitcoiners believe if we fix the money, we can fix the world. I think they're right. Stay smart, stay free, learn BTC. Hey, we'll see you next time.